Hey A&Pers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is A&P 1, Lecture Test 2, Video 1. So for Test 2, we are covering Chapter 4, the tissue level of organization, and Chapter 5, the integumentary system, which is the skin and hair and nail and glands and stuff like that. So let's dig in. We will start at the top of page 2, which for me looks like this. We're starting Chapter 4, the tissue level. So there are 4 tissues: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. Let's see what our PowerPoint here says. Print the note set for test 2, fill it in, read Martini chapters 4 and 5, and print and label the test to print. For lab, review, memorize, and check your spelling. Spelling counts. Yeah, we're not quite there yet. Yeah, no, we probably are. Start looking at the bones. Once you've taken lab test 1, start right in on lab test 2. Highlight the terms in the lab books, read the lab books, and print and label those prints. I still recommend putting them in clear plastic sheet protectors and mark them up with a dry erase marker. Fine or an ultra fine would probably be better than a chisel tip, but definitely check your spelling. Spelling counts on these lab tests. All right, let's get me out of the, there's no, okay. So levels of organization. As a review, we did chemicals for test 1 in chapter 2. We did the cellular level of organization in chapter 3 for test 1. These were both in test 1. And now for test 2, we're doing chapter 4, which is the tissue level of organization. And then the organs we will study as we study their organ systems. So for this test, we're covering the integumentary system, chapter 5. Test 3 will be over the skeletal system. Test 4 will be over the muscular system. And tests 5 and 6 and test 1 of next semester will be over the nervous system. And then test 2 next semester, endocrine, and then test 3 for 2402, cardiovascular. We're skipping lymphatic and cardiovascular, the heart, the blood vessels, the blood, and then we will do respiratory and digestive, and then urinary and biochem, and then the last test will be reproduction and development. So that's all of anatomy and physiology in 2 semesters, and we are going not by body region, but by organ system. So this semester we will get up through the nervous system, partway through, most of the way through the nervous system, and then next semester start in on special senses and make it through the rest of the systems. So that's where we are. Click. Okay, so as a review, do we have? Yeah, okay. So in case, there we go, in case you don't know, and I am not going to test you over these embryo slides. When I learned the embryology first, our first trimester of chiropractic school, we took embryology. And so then the entire rest of our anatomy and physiology education was based on this understanding of embryology. Where do these cells come from? What kind of cells were they? What kind of cells are they becoming? Where do they migrate? And so this was all part of my basic understanding of anatomy. So I am showing you this so that you have some concepts in your head. I will not test you over the embryology until test 6 of 2402, when we get to sex and babies, also known as reproduction and development. So, but basic concepts for you. The egg and the sperm meet, and this is called fertilization, and it produces a zygote, which is a single-celled organism. The zygote divides, and after a week it makes a blastocyst. So the blastocyst has several parts. There's a blastocele, the trophoblast, and then these 2, you see the light blue cells and the yellow cells here? That was you. That's the baby. So, and then, So this trophoblast bit becomes the placenta, and this bit becomes the amniotic cavity. And then these two layers of clump of cells become two flat layers. And this is a cross section. If you're looking down at it, it makes an oval disc. And so these are the inner mass cells, and they're called the blastodisc. And then they make a third layer. There's terms for all of this we will learn when we are going to be tested over it. For now, I'm just giving you concepts. And those three layers are called the primary germ layers. I don't have my pen turned on. We need a red pen going on here. Yeah. The primary germ layers, and they are the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. And these are the three germ layers that made all your cells. All your cells. So the ectoderm becomes neural tissue. The mesoderm becomes connective tissue and muscle tissue, and everything contributes to epithelia and glands. So that's how that works. All right, so the histology is the study of tissues. Cells and their cell products working together to perform limited functions are tissues. Histology we've talked about. 4 basic types of tissues. So the epithelial tissue covers the surface, covers outer surfaces, covers inner surfaces that we'll call passageways, and also your glands, like your sweat glands, are made of epithelia. Number 2 is the connective tissue. Connective tissue are the filler, the structure, the transport, basically everything that's not 1, 3, or 4 gets lumped together as a connective tissue. 3 is the muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is specialized to contract. Like literally it gets shorter. That's contracting. And then nervous tissue is number 4, and it carries information. So of these 4, number 3 and 4 are excitable. And how I usually say it is they're excitable with jazz hands. So there you go. So epithelial tissue includes the epithelia and the glands. Epithelia are layers of cells that cover internal and external surfaces. Epithelia are a layer or multiple layers of cells that cover internal and external surfaces. So this will include your skin, your digestive tract, the lining of your digestive tract, the lining of your respiratory tract, the lining of your urinary tract, the lining of your reproductive tracts, basically the linings of all the tubes, including your blood vessels, are made of epithelia. And glands secrete stuff, and stuff is the technical term. Stuff including things like sweat, sebum, cerumen, digestive enzymes, and we'll cover all of that as we get there. So the functions of the epithelial tissue, they provide physical protection. Your skin keeps the good stuff in and the bad stuff out. It physically protects you. It protects you from abrasion, dehydration, chemical damage, and biological damage from pathogenic organisms, which are things that want to cause harm, like bacteria. And they change the permeability. They allow what gets in and out of the cells. Sensation, there are nerves in your skin. And specialized secretion, they secrete stuff. And this will be the gland part of the epithelial tissue. The epithelial tissue are the epithelia, which are the linings, and the glands, which secrete stuff. And then the characteristics of epithelia, we're out of order on the slide, aren't we? The characteristics are cellularity. When we do look at the connective tissues, we see both cells and the extracellular products that the cells have made. So we'll see matrix and tissues and fibers and all kinds of crazy stuff. But in the epithelial tissues, it's really only just cells, layers one layer of cells or multiple layers of cells. So the fact that it has cellularity means that it's really just cells. Polarity means that it has a top and a bottom. As you can see here, the top, I'll go ahead and tell you, is called the apical surface. That's a P. I have terrible handwriting and I'm writing with a mouse, so apologies. Apical surface. You know what? It says it on the picture, doesn't it? It says it right there. So apical is the adjective form of apex. And the apex is the pointy part. So the apex of a mountain is the top, the pointy part. And then there's the basal surface, basolateral surface. That includes the sides. The basal surface, and the basal surface is the bottom, the base. So a connective tissue cell, like a bone cell or a fat cell, does not have a top or a bottom. If it has a top and bottom, if it has distinct surfaces, apical surface, basal surface, lateral surfaces, then it is an epithelial cell. So if you see a top and a bottom on a cell that look functionally different, then you're looking at an epithelium. So they have polarity, they have poles. Like poles in a magnet. The two ends function differently. Those are poles. Okay, put that back. And they have attachment, middle bullet, and they attach to this basement membrane. If I haven't told you in lab, you need to know the Latin for basement membrane, and that is basal lamina, which means basement, base, and lamina means layer, so membrane. Now in lab, you can put either basement membrane or basal lamina, but you need to go either all English or all Latin. So if you give me like basal basement, you've given me the same term in two different languages, and that's not for credit. So attachment is that it attaches to the basement membrane, and then the basement membrane attaches it to the connective tissue. So there's always going to be an epithelium, a basement membrane, and a connective tissue underneath it. Every time. Every time, every time. Every time until 2402 and we get into the exceptions, and then it won't be every time. But we'll talk about that. And the epithelial tissue is avascular. A means without, vas means vessel. So avascularity means it does not have blood vessels. So I don't know if you, when you were a kid, used to take like the straight pins and put them through your fingers, but like not to where they would bleed, but just through the avascular portion, just through the epithelium, and then you'd have a pin pointing out through your skin. Like my mom used to always freak out, and my kids did it, and I thought it was funny. And then they watched Wolverine, and then they would do the pins like this direction, so they had like just my kids. Okay. Yeah. That happened. And so that's avascularity, that it does not have blood vessels. Connective tissues are vascular, epithelial tissues are avascular. Okay, most of the connective tissues are vascular, we'll get to that. And then last bullet at the bottom of page 2 is the regeneration, and it can make more cells. It undergoes mitosis. The basal cell has a high mitotic rate. There's a layer of stem cells that can divide. Okay. Next page. The ways to classify epithelia. And there are two ways, by the number of layers and by the shapes of the cells. Those are the two ways to classify epithelia. Excuse me. So the number of layers, if it's one layer of cells, then it is a simple epithelium, as you see here. If there's more than one layer of cells, then it is a stratified epithelium. Okay, that didn't fit on the screen, but okay. So simple, one layer, stratified, more than one layer. And the cell shapes are, I skipped the top of the page of the note set. Okay, what are the two functions of the regions of the epithelial surfaces? The apical surface and the basolateral surface are the functional regions. The functions of microvilli are to increase surface area for absorption, and you will find this in the digestive tract, specifically the small intestine. And the motile cilia function to move stuff across the cell surface, and you'll find this in the respiratory tract and also the reproductive tract. So you're moving the mucus up the mucociliary escalator, and you're also moving the eggs and the sperm in the reproductive tracts. Okay, the integrity of epithelia we're not doing. Okay, then we're here. The shapes are squamous, this means flat, cuboidal, this means cube-shaped, and columnar, this means column-shaped or taller than it is wide. And the number of layers, which is either simple for one layer, stratified for more than one layer, as we said. And where do you find simple epithelia? So where do you find a single layer? You find these lining internal compartments and passageways. And by compartments, I mean spaces. And by passageways, I mean tubes. So lining internal compartments and passageways. So I'm giving you the jargon definition and also an English explanation of what does that mean. And so you find them as the serous membranes are simple squamous epithelia. Lining the inside of the heart and the blood vessels are also simple squamous epithelia. And then lining the insides of the intestines and the lungs, and this is for secretion and absorption. So, where do you find stratified epithelia? So this is more than one layer. You find them in areas exposed to mechanical or chemical stress. So the skin, which is stratified squamous epithelium, the mouth, stratified squamous epithelium, and then other places that undergo stress. Okay, so we will start the charts all together on the next video. So this has been A&P 1, Lecture Test 2, Video 1, and we covered note sets pages 2 and 3, and we will start Video 2 at the bottom of page note set 3. So thank you as always for tuning in. The education must go on. Dr. J out.